bring the Hamilton Township Committee meeting for Monday, August 2nd, 2021 to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law by posting a notice of this meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building and by publication in the Press of Atlantic City and the Star Ledger on January the 11th, 2021. Mr. Cheek?
Here.
Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Here.
Mr. Patali?
Here.
Mayor Kane.
Here. At this moment, I'd ask you to please join me in a moment of silence for private reflection. Thank you. All right, first item of on the agenda this evening is a proclamation for somebody by the name of Bobby Hamilton.
Robert.
Oh, Robert. Okay.
And you got dressed up for this occasion.
Me too.
Come on up, Bob.
I'm gonna bring it down.
Come on. So everybody can see. I know, I'm gonna get it. I know that. Whereas Robert Hamilton, a lifelong resident of the Township of Hamilton, joined the Mays Landing Volunteer Fire Company in June 1973, eventually earning the rank of captain, assistant chief, and fire coordinator, as well as fire chief from 2015 through 2017. And whereas Robert Hamilton was instrumental in establishing the Hamilton Township Dive Team, serving as chief for over 20 years, and has also been a dedicated member of the Hamilton Township Rescue Squad for over 15 years. And whereas Robert Hamilton further demonstrated his dedication to the community by offering the use of his garage to store a fire truck for 18 months. Well, Pearson got it done sooner than that. You should give us some money back. during the reconstruction of the Cotton Mill Bridge, so that the fire department could respond quickly and efficiently to fire calls with no disruption in response time or service. And whereas, although individuals who selflessly serve others often neither receive nor seek the thanks of the public, Robert Hamilton deserves recognition for his support to the township. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Township Committee of the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, on this day, August 2nd, 2021, recognize Robert Hamilton in recognition of his unwavering loyalty and faithful dedication to the Township of Hamilton. We offer our sincere thanks and gratitude to him for the thousands of homes, families, and lives he has saved through his devotion to the community.
Thank you. I just want to say, Hamilton Township is very fortunate, and they have a lot of hardworking and dedicated first responders, from police right on down the line, right on down to our 911 dispatchers, who are our absolute lifeline. And I applaud them, and I thank them for the help that they've given me over the years and the support they've given me. And be safe out there, and thank you.
I know you didn't want this thanks, but this is something that we all wanted to do for you. So we thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
You can leave.
Yep, yeah, clip over there.
Okay, a little ad libbing.
Just a little bit.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Safety on the agenda, an overview by Joe Henry from Hardenberg Insurance. Joe?
All right, just to let you know, this wasn't planned this way, but seeing these emergency responders and having that presentation really fits in, and it kind of falls along the lines of what I'm doing here tonight. The GIF puts a huge emphasis on safety and the requirement of being a member is that you have safety on the agenda at least once a year. So we, as your risk manager, typically like to come up with an idea that's relevant and pertinent to safety. So when I saw this bulletin issued by the safety consultant for the GIF, J.A. Montgomery, it immediately came to my attention that seatbelts saving lives would be a good topic this year. And as you can see from this bulletin here, I have a 34-year-old firefighter from Ohio. He was going to a barn fire. His vehicle rolled. He was ejected, and tragically, he was killed. A 34-year-old man, as I said, he was on his way to a barn fire. And motor vehicle crashes, there's a second leading cause of firefighter fatalities in the United States today. And as I mentioned, I'll just skim through this very quickly for you. On the next page, I told you that's why I'm here. We do like to recognize the leaders of your safety program, as always, with Lisa leading the charge as your safety coordinator and your fund commissioner, and Mary serving as your claims coordinator. I'm happy to report that in 2020, the results of the Township Safety Program netted you $2,750. That is solely because your safety committee is dedicated to doing what is expected of them in the GIF safety program. And also there are 3 other items there that are given to you by the GIF for optional safety budget money, wellness money, and EPL cyber liability for being a member. So on to the presentation. In the beginning, in 1982, State Representative David Hollister of Michigan introduced a bill. Civil liberty advocates rallied hard against that proposed bill. The fellow legislature said that a vote of that kind was a recallable offense. Representative Hollister received numerous pieces of hate mail, including death threats. And what was that bill he was proposing? What could be so horrible? It was a seatbelt law. At that time, only 14% of Americans regularly wore seatbelts, even though lap and shoulder belts were required in all vehicles as early as 1968. And resistance to these life-saving devices was the norm. Drivers and passengers complained that seatbelts were uncomfortable and restrictive, but the uproar over mandatory seatbelt laws was mostly ideological. New York was the first state to pass a mandatory seatbelt law in 1985, quickly followed by New Jersey. There was a $50 fine, which those of us back in the day can remember that was a pretty good sum of money back then. Seatbelt compliance jumped to over 70% in New York in less than a year, so it was obvious that the ticket law was working. Michigan did adopt the seatbelt law in July of '85, almost 4 years after Representative Hollister introduced it. Sadly, that 4th of July weekend, 25 motorists died in car crashes in Michigan. None of them were wearing seatbelts. As of August 2020, only New Hampshire was without a mandatory seatbelt law. And as a result, seatbelt use in New Hampshire is estimated at 70% compared to more than 90% nationally. I would like to add that in 2019, 74% of all traffic fatalities in New Hampshire were unbelted victims. And there currently is an initiative in New Hampshire to adopt a mandatory seatbelt law. Next page, just a few things you may not know about seatbelts. Lots of people think I jump in the car, I go around a corner, I'm going to the store, quickly back and forth. Most accidents happen within a mile or 2 of your home. Thinking a slow roll, you're not going to get hurt. Crashing at 25 miles per hour is like falling from a second-story window. And a collision at 60 miles per hour for an unbelted victim is like falling 12 stories from a building. In a crash, not wearing a seatbelt is going to increase your chances of being ejected by 3,000%. And the chance of surviving are very, very slim. Bottom line is seatbelts save lives. It's estimated 13,000 lives a year are saved simply by clicking on a seatbelt. Traffic accidents, unfortunately, are the leading cause of death for U.S. teens. According to the CDC, 6 teens between the ages of 16 and 19 die every day in motor vehicle accident, which is why the driving schools really push the seatbelts to the kids. Some of the benefits of wearing a seatbelts, they are, no doubt about it, the most effective way to prevent death and serious injury. They can help you control your vehicle, keeping you positioned in your seat when it crashes. They will keep you in place during impact, and they are designed to work with airbags. On this next page, I have a picture of a vehicle. It was a total loss of the vehicle. As you can see, it was mangled. You may have seen this. It was in every publication in the United States and worldwide in March. It's Tiger Woods, the famous golfer's vehicle. He was doing 87 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. The police on the scene said had he not been wearing a seatbelt, he would not have survived the crash. Just another example of how seatbelts save lives. On the next page, I do have information from underwriters being in the industry. I have two quick stories related to that, one with a positive outcome and one with a tragic ending. The first one was a personal underwriter story. She came home from work. It was icy conditions. She was concerned about her daughter, her 19-year-old daughter, who she had told numerous times be sure to wear a seatbelt. She did not hear from her for quite some time. Finally, she heard from the daughter. The daughter said that, "Mom, I was in an accident. I'm okay. The car rolled. I had my seatbelt on. I'm okay." So once again, seatbelts do save lives. Tragically, the next one, it was a young teenager, picked up her friend going to school. The passenger was seatbelted in. The driver was not. They hit some black ice, struck a tree. And tragically, the driver was killed. So I leave you with this simple thought. Don't let your loved one become one of these statistics. They're more than numbers. They are real people. First thing you do when you get in your car, put your belt on. Second thing you do, check the person next to you, check the person behind you. I can't tell you countless times with my wife as my passenger, put your seatbelt on. Same story. I always do when I'm driving. Well, you got to get used to it. You're not driving now. If they don't put it on, tell them they have to put it on or they have to get out, because a person belted in can also become a projectile and injure you or anyone else in the vehicle. So by taking care of others, you're taking care of yourself also. Because one person convinced can be a life saved. Bottom line, seatbelt laws work. I'd like to say thanks for the opportunity to serve as your RMC, and if there's any questions related to this or the safety program, I'll be happy to answer those.
Ready? Question? I too can attest, Joe. Joe, thank you for your presentation. My daughter was just in a pretty horrific accident. Wearing your seatbelt, 5 airbags went off, and she got out of the car and walked away. So it resonates home with me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the relationship with Hardenberg and the Township. It's been seamless. We appreciate it, and I know you do too. So thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to move on to the next Lanning County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. Chief?
So I'm a little upset because I thought everybody was here to hear me speak and then they all left. So I guess that says
Watch this
not
room
too
there.
much. So basically, I'm going to be real brief because we have a lot of things to discuss tonight. What I did want to discuss briefly is the Atlantic County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan update. So natural hazards are part of Atlantic County and elsewhere. These had the potential for loss of property along with loss of life. Atlantic County went into the multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan in 2010 to meet the requirements of the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 from FEMA. The development of the plan was paid for by FEMA funds. What it does, it requires that every 5 years it gets updated just to keep the conversation going and make sure that we're doing our part to mitigate potential hazards in the community. The dam, for instance, the floodgates were an issue, so obviously we're in the process of mitigating that. That's in partnership with Atlantic County. The culverts, dry run, it gets flooded, so we speak with the engineers and see how that can be mitigated. So it's things of those natures that we discuss and we try to put on this plan to resolve within that 5-year period. Some of them are ongoing. As disasters come up, we realize that there's other issues that we have to address. So this plan basically is a plan that is ongoing. They want, once again, like I said, to update it every 5 years to keep the discussion going. So part of me speaking tonight is to keep that discussion going. So if anybody has any ideas on how to make the Township of Hamilton a better or a safer place, let us know, whether it has to do with storms. Our generator here was part of that mitigation plan, because we do have people coming in if there's natural disasters. ACCC is a spot that people can go in case of natural disasters. So they've updated their shingles and things of that nature on the roof because of fire hazards and things of that nature. So it's out on our website. You can look there for more information. If you want to go to the Atlantic County website, it mentions it there. And once again, if you guys have any questions or ideas, please let us know. You can always email me at gsambrone@townshipofhamilton.com. And that's about it. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Questions from committee to what the chief just presented? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do we have a plan dealing with COVID if the numbers continue to increase?
That's not part of this, but we will have a plan township-wide between the administrator and myself. We'll come up with a plan like we did when COVID started the first time.
How are you going to mitigate the flooding of Dry Run and the subsequent basements being flooded?
It is ongoing. So the person that isn't here that would probably best answer that, which is Brett Knoll.
Okay.
So I can get that answer for you.
Okay.
There he is.
Oh.
Basically, the reconstruction of the dam is number one on the priority list to mitigate the flooding at Dry Run. We've also looked at rerouting the water down Ken's Skull and all those out. There's 5 outfall pipes there, so it's a huge project. In the past years, we've looked at tying those 5 culverts into one and running them out to the Mill Street Bridge. Like the chief was saying, everything's ongoing. Once the dam's replaced, we'll revisit that and see if that's cost effective.
Yeah, well, at one time, the water did go down Ken's Skull and Lenape, didn't it? Or
Yes, every time we've had a breach of Dry Run, the water naturally runs down Hudson Street there and tries to seek its level at the tidal side of the river. So that area, Mays Landing, was built up, which used to be the water's natural path. So
there are creeks that are underneath the ground that are hard to control, but as you control the level of the dam, it does get controlled, so to speak.
right now, our daily monitoring of the dam is probably our best recourse with the flooding rate.
Which we appreciate.
It's fixed, so.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Brett. Thanks for that. All right, we'll move on at this point. Hearing no additional questions. To additions and deletions of late agenda items to be considered for action tonight. We have no additions. We have one deletion, which will be 7G, the resolution authorizing a reduction of performance guarantee funds for Glen Air at Hamilton. So that will be removed. With that, we'll move on to item 2, which is early public comment on agenda items to be considered for action tonight.
We have one individual, Nakasa Carries, on the Basin Monet Drive. If you want to come forward.
Come up to the microphone, please. State your name and address for the record. Oh, okay.
I may mispronounce your name. Come up to the
I know,
microphone.
no one can pronounce it. Same school for 12
Yeah.
years and they still
Didn't
mispronounce
hear
it.
any of it.
Hello,
How are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. And yourself? Great. I am here as a member of the board for Glen Air HOA. I'm one of the board members. There are two others present as well.
Could you speak a little closer to that microphone if we need to adjust that for you?
Sure, how's that? I was afraid it was
I
going to
didn't catch
fall
the
out.
name. I didn't hear her name.
Nikki,
I'm
can
sorry.
you say and spell your name for us, please?
Sure.
I didn't catch your name at all.
Oh, my name is Nikasia Carries.
Fantastic.
It's Nick and Asia like the continent. Now it's too low. Okay. I'll use my teacher voice and stand back. My last name is Carries, Caires, and I'm one of the board members at Glen Air in Mace Landing. There are two other board members here this evening. We did send an email off late last week at the advisement of someone who answered the phone when I called in the planning committee office. And we're really here just to seek the township's assistance in getting our dry basin functioning to a dry basin. It has not been dry since I've lived there. I've lived there 3 years this August. The water sits. We have a multitude of problems happening, and we just need assistance in getting it fixed. And we're not even sure where to start, to be honest.
I mean, I actually know that, first of all, we did receive the email. I did
Yes.
read it.
I saw your response too. Thank you that you sent on Sunday, but I don't check till Monday night. Sorry for my emails.
I do know that Committeeman Cheek has been out there with our engineer. We went over some things. Bob, we also received the letter. Are they aware of the fact that currently we've held up releasing the bond money to?
You just did that tonight by removing 7G from the agenda.
Okay.
That was done at my request.
So currently, by removing the item we removed tonight, we have not allowed the bank to be able to receive the monies that are set aside to finish this project. So that is a combination, again, of the engineer going out there and inspecting it, finding out not done to satisfaction, and the action taken on behalf of our solicitors.
Yeah. And I guess what has us most concerned is that we were told there's only $27,000 left in the bond money, and that surely would not be enough to probably to even do all the soil testing. And it was offered to us if we would, well, it was suggested that perhaps we accept that and just spray for mosquitoes and leave the basin as is. And that's not satisfactory to any of the residents, as you can imagine. Two folks today just called and said they're putting their house up for sale because they're so upset about that. They're afraid that this isn't going to get fixed in their part. They're two of the houses that are really most affected by it. So we're here as a teacher, an electrician, and a retired police officer, state police officer, asking just if you all can help us out and help us get to the bottom of it and get it fixed.
How many homes are affected?
37.
37 have no dry basement?
No, basin. Sorry,
Basin.
basin,
Oh, the
yes,
basin.
not basement.
I thought the basement.
Yeah, oh my goodness, that would
Oh,
be even
okay,
worse.
so it's not
We
working
do have
right.
many folks with a wet basement as
Oh,
well.
okay. So the basin is not working correctly.
No, ma'am, it has not drained completely since I've lived there. And supposedly it's supposed to be within 72 hours of a rainfall. At one point, we went over a month from one rainfall, but it just never drained.
It's not good.
And I don't profess to be a professional in this area, so we really are. That is the reason that we're here, filling up your pews, because we just don't know what to do. This was turned over to us in January when the bank and the developer stole out in the middle of the night, and they said, "We've all resigned. You're in charge." Ta-da.
I think we'll have further conversation.
Okay, great.
And I just want you to know that it is something that's brought to our attention. 10 years ago, we took on the issue of basins in Hamilton Township, and we brought almost, I believe, all of them into compliance. And you know, once something's brought to our attention, I can assure you we're going to do the best we can in order to help you out of your situation. And again, I think this gentleman sitting at the table, I believe you may have met Steve.
Once, during the paving, yes.
He's extremely well versed. I know he's been out there with Committeeman Chief, and I know that they are on top of the situation, and we will stay in contact with you and let you know the progress.
Okay,
But I
great.
think you'll be seeing him or both of them quite a bit more.
Okay, and we have faith. Steve's given us his word that he's got our back. So I believe him. Yeah. Okay. And for what it's worth, Steve has been the only one who has given us information. So,
Well, as I
Okay.
said in my email, I'm always available. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, but with all due respect, he is the professional, and he's gonna go out, do the inspections, and then he's gonna advise us on how we need to proceed. And, you're gonna get the attention you deserve, I promise.
okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that signed up that wishes to speak? Sir, would you come up to the microphone, please?
Yes, later.
No, that is a public hearing, and there will be an opportunity to speak at that time. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on items that are not currently listed for a public hearing this evening? Okay. Hearing none? We'll move on to item 3. Discussion, formal actions may be taken. First, we have A, the 2020 Audit Report. This will be a resolution certifying the governing body members have received and reviewed at a minimum the comments and recommendation portion of the annual report of audits. Peter?
There was only one recommendation in the report. That was a reconciliation of developers' escrow accounts. The CFO has been working on it. She'll have a corrective action plan for you at your next meeting. She started working on it back after she took office in January, so it will be resolved shortly.
And she did provide us with a report in our,
Departmental reports, yes.
to show exactly what she has, what they've discovered and what we're gonna do moving forward in order to correct the situation. So,
Yes.
Committee, questions, comments? Do we need to undertake other than voting on accepting it? It's all-
Need a motion, a second, and a vote.
If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion, I have a second. Rita, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Yes. Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we'll move on to discussion item B, county municipal court. I believe that we've had presentations, we've had discussion on this for quite some time. Numbers were presented, numbers were audited on several different sides. Peter, you want to give any?
I just want to pass something out first. I did get today an updated court model for savings to Hamilton Township, so let me give everybody a copy of that. Last month, County Counsel Jim Ferguson was here with retired Judge Mark Sanson that explained to you what the county court, how it would function, who was participating at that time. The revised number is that the projected savings for Hamilton Township is $294,000, a little bit less than $300,000. We've been losing close to $300,000 a year in court operations for the past 3 years. If you not include the pandemic year we lost over $500,000 because revenue wasn't coming in. In addition to that, we will get our revenue paid back to us. Our 3-year average for revenue in our court is $627,000. So our assessment to the county is going to be $439,000, and we should be getting $600,000 back. So it's almost a swing of $500,000 between the 300 we're losing, and the net gain of 200 between the revenue return and the savings. My conversations with the county council, who's the point person appointed by County Exec Levison, is that we have 7 employees that have worked for the township for a while, operating the court, that worked in a large court. And we would like to do everything possible to make sure they have the opportunity to go work for the county court system if they choose at a comparable salary. If we go forward with this, they have agreed to put a representative of Hamilton Township on the personnel committee who will be involved in setting salaries and selecting personnel. So I think it gives us some security to protect those 7 employees, but you have the balancing of close to $500,000 savings to the taxpayer and, you know, the future of the 7 employees. So I think we can accommodate both. We can pass that savings on. The other item which is related to this, I've been in discussions with the county over the Hamilton Township Police Department providing court security there, which be running the screening device and being, for lack of a better word, the bailiff, so to speak, in the 2 courtrooms. And the county has tentatively accepted the proposal we've given them. They've asked me to draft a shared service agreement to send over to them. So my intention, if you pass a resolution tonight to join, is to draft that. Let Solicitor Sandman take a look at it before I send it over to County Council Ferguson. But I think the protection that the shared service give us by our police department having a physical presence on the property every single day the courtroom is open helps us immensely, provides that communication between the court and the police department, and gives us a better presence on Main Street in downtown.
But I appreciate that, Peter, and I just want for committee's purpose and for purpose of the public, we are not making a decision on that this evening. We're strictly making the decision on the, whether or not we want to join the county court system, which will be located right here in Hamilton Township, along with the other municipalities that have joined. I can tell you this is not a decision that I have taken lightly. I can tell you I went from an absolute hard no to get into this, but I was elected to represent all the residents of the town of Hamilton. We've had many discussions on the dais. I've had discussions with my deputy mayor. We sat in on various committees, and we went on a process of collecting information. That information was then was put together in-house. We took that information and we sent it to a third party. We sent it to our auditor to make sure nothing was added out, so we could get an accurate description of what our actual cost was to run our court system. I must also add that with the 7 individuals that we have there, we run one of the lowest cost per case through our court system. We have a very efficient court system, but with that being said, we're still losing in excess of $300,000 a year. So, and that's with having arguably the most efficient court system in the township. So, those numbers are numbers that we have to look at seriously, because the only way you recognize real tax relief for your residents in your municipality, in your township, in your county, is by consolidation of services. That's the only way we all win if it works right. So I'm very confident in the amount of work over the last several months that has been put into this, and that the numbers that we're looking at, especially from the township side, are accurate, and these are significant savings that we could realize, which were passed on to the taxpayers. So with that, committee questions, comments?
It would be civil service, yes. The county employees are all civil service. No. You have to file a reorganization plan for shared service with the civil service, but that doesn't give the civil service people from the municipality a upper hand or upper step, so to speak, on the non-civil service communities that are joining.
And I do want you to think of one thing, Mr. Chardon, I appreciate that's a great question that you asked. Again, with my comments earlier, we have one of the most efficient court systems and run arguably the highest volume through. I believe that that would make our employees much more attractive to move over to the county system as employees, just because of that in itself, the sheer volume that they're capable of moving on a daily basis and monthly basis.
I think I said it, but I'll repeat it, is that if you go forward with it, I've already made the request to County Council Ferguson that a representative of Hamilton Township sits on the Personnel Committee so that we can, everyone look at protect our employees or ensure that employees get a fair shake at a position going forward. And we're not leaving them out, on their own there.
How many employees would the county employ for this service?
Their estimate is between 20 and 22 full-time employees that we need to run a court with 9 towns participating. If you choose to participate, it would give them the 3 largest municipalities, being Galloway and Carper Township, and then Hamilton, that would probably make up close to 70 to 75% of their caseload.
Now, what is the greatest percentage of cases that are heard? How are they heard?
The proposal that was given to you last month is that 75% of all cases heard in municipal court will be heard virtually going forward. Really the only cases that have in-person trials would be those where you could face jail time or a criminal charge, things such as DWIs, assault cases, domestic abuse type cases. Those are the ones that probably would be in-person trials. And Judge Grant, who oversees municipal courts, back in June, he issued a directive to all the municipal courts telling them that virtual court has worked so well during the pandemic. We're not going back to in-person court. We're going to continue having virtual court for the foreseeable future in New Jersey. And that was just not to Atlantic vicinage, that was to all the courts throughout the state that directive was given. Yeah, the savings to us is close to $300,000 a year by joining the county court system, plus what I would estimate somewhere between $100,000 to $200,000 in positive cash revenue coming in from our fines that we collect.
Now, how will they organize? Will it be like we do with municipal court? Everyone comes in and you get called maybe 3 hours later or whatever?
No. Okay, my understanding is that virtual court will all be scheduled. You'll be told that at 9 o'clock, 9:30, whatever you're doing it. And on the trials that take place, you're going to be told that your trial is Tuesday at 9 o'clock for your DWI, or your domestic abuse is 10:30 that morning, and you would show up for your trial. There would be no what they call a cow call at 9 o'clock in the morning that all 70 people on the docket show up at the same time, sign in, you sit around for 3 or 4 hours waiting for your case to be called. Everything would be scheduled. Our municipal court's been running Zoom court, so to speak, for probably 10 months, if not 11 months by now. And all those things are scheduled. They send out notices that you're scheduled for a certain time, and you log on then and your case is heard.
Very good.
Committee, any other questions or comments?
So
Hearing none. Peter, are we in a position that we could, if we take a vote this evening, assuming that that vote is in the affirmative, do we have a resolution?
yeah, I have a resolution which the county circulated at all the 8 municipalities that have already joined and adopted the same resolution. So it's basically a boilerplate resolution. I'll pass that out. So before the night is over, you can entertain voting on it after everybody had a chance to read it during the course of the meeting.
This is what I have. When you have a minute, if you can look it over, anything that needs to be changed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, not tonight, in the morning.
similar resolution that was adopted in other municipalities that have joined, correct?
Yes, Mayor. Yes, you can opt out after 2 years. Yes, the Central Municipal Court is a 10-year deal. But after 2 years, if you don't like the way it's going, you give them 6 months' notice and you're allowed to opt out. Yes. So there is a supplemental agreement that has to be executed within that agreement that all the municipalities will sign with the county. There's the opt-out provision after 2 years with 6 months' notice. You can leave if you're not satisfied with how the court is proceeding. You can reestablish your own municipal court. No. Yeah, there's no penalty if after 2 years you're saying, we're leaving at 6 months. There's not an exit fee or exit tax, so to speak.
Anyone else need additional time with it, or are you prepared to move forward?
Well, you said this doesn't include the police.
Now, that would be a separate shared service agreement at some point in time. If you pass this tonight, I would assume that sometime, hopefully in early September, I'll bring you back another resolution that be done authorizing entering into the shared service agreement with the County of Atlantic.
Any additional questions or comments? Did we have a chance to review it? Again, this is one from the adopted municipalities. That we have, I'll entertain a motion.
I have a question. If we're a very efficient court, how are we losing $300,000 a year?
I think that's a great point, and that's why I bring up the point. Even with us being the lowest, if you take the expenses that the county put forth and you look at our cost per court case, we are the most efficient, and we're still losing $300,000 a year. And that's when you factor in salaries, obviously the operation. That does not even include things such as the maintenance, upkeep, heating, and air conditioning of this particular room, and pension costs. When you start factoring all of them in, that's where you come up with that savings. And that's, again, with being, from my calculation, the most efficient court in the county.
Committeewoman, the state has changed what municipalities can do to collect money and what they can negotiate or barter, in the courtroom as to let people plead to lesser agreements, lesser charges. And so starting about 4 or 5 years ago, every municipality literally throughout the state were no longer breaking even in their cost operations. Every year the deficit keeps on getting larger, and our 3-year average that the CFO put together, 3 years ago, we lost, if I remember correctly, somewhere around $229,000. The next year we were around $250,000, and last year we were like $280 something. With the pandemic, the number was in excess of $400,000 we lost. And even this year is probably going to be a number in excess of $300,000. We just don't have the teeth to chase people to pay their bills anymore. When they get convicted, we have to wait for the next time they show up in court again.
So it's lost revenue from people not really paying their.
It's what the judge can fine them for, where the money goes to the state or whether the money stays with the municipality. In the past, judges were able to allow people to down plea or plea to a lesser charge, which may have been paid to the municipal side and not to the state side. The state took a lot of those options away from municipalities several years ago because they wanted to make sure they got their money, that we weren't negotiating away their money on behalf of ours. We used to be able to suspend driver's licenses for non-payment of fines. The state said we couldn't do that anymore because people have to go to work. We issued failure to appear warrants and we'd be able to go pick people up. We weren't unable to go do that anymore. We had to wait for them to show up in court again to enforce a failure to appear warrant. So many of the things that we had as leverage to compel people to pay went out the window.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
It, well, I could tell you that when I first started in this profession, you expected that your municipal court generated enough money to pay for 4 or 5 police officers' salaries because they were the ones writing the tickets. In the last 10 years, it was lucky that the court generated enough money to break even to cover their own salaries, and since then it's gone the other way. If you look at our municipal budget, people will say that, well, if I look at the revenue, $627,000 coming in, and it costs you $640,000 in salaries and wages and OE, you're breaking even. As the mayor pointed out, you have to go over the pension line, the healthcare line, and the other taxes line to find, where the money's being lost at. It's not really represented in that line item there. So while some smaller courts that they thought they were breaking even, when they added in the cost, the class 2 officers do the security detail and the associated costs like that, there's not one town in Atlantic County that's not losing money to operate their municipal court.
Now, the county will have the same issue, won't they, with the pensions and overcosts and stuff like that?
Yes. But some of the costs for the operation of the building, the county is their building, they're subsidizing all the utility costs. That's not going into the budget at all. They believe that with the economy of scale they have, they're going to see the repeat offenders more often, so they're going to be able to collect the money. If somebody got arrested for shoplifting in Hamilton Township and they told the judge it was their first time and we had no record of anything else, and next week they're in the Galloway court also for shoplifting, telling the judge the same story, there's no compounding of it. The judge is going to see that repeat offender, and if the person doesn't pay their fine, they're going to be incarcerated, because it's not that they owe a fine to Hamilton or Galloway, they own it to the county court system. And when they see them the second, third time, they're going to be able to collect the fine from them. So the ability to collect from seeing the frequent flyers, so to speak, is going to be a lot easier for them.
Hearing none.
Is there are we under a time constraint to push this through tonight?
The county would like a commitment this month from everyone, because the transition period to say, yes, we're going forward. In September, they are going to have to advertise for positions, conduct interviews late September, early October, so that our staff or whoever's going to work for them knows 2 months, 3 months ahead of time. I have a job come, January 1. I know where I'm going. They have to interview the judges. They have to interview public defenders, prosecutors. There's a lot of work that has to be done. And by pushing this thing off to September, you're just closing the gap. And the lead time to do it right gets compressed, and that's where you make mistakes.
On the agenda, we were going to discuss it, and now we're talking about making a motion to move it forward. That's just...
That's the Township Committee's choice as to how you want to proceed. We put it on for discussion, hoping to have the chart I passed out to you, and if we had all that information, then the assumption was there was sufficient information to make a decision tonight to move forward or not to move forward. So I prepared a resolution in the event that as a result of the conversation that you want to act upon and move forward.
So the resolution could be introduced next time? Or do you have to have it, done twice?
Introduce it tonight.
You can introduce and adopt. It's only a resolution, it's not an ordinance, so, I don't know what additional information we're going to bring to the table 2 weeks from now. If we're going to postpone voting on it for 2 weeks, there's there's no new information that's going to be before you for you to make your decision than exists tonight.
You looked at a five-year historical, God bless you. You looked at a five-year historical analysis of the court cost and what the losses were. And then, of course, looked at the county numbers twice, which is readjusted. So there's no new evidence that's going to be brought to light. Something that we want to continue doing, move forward with, or we don't. I mean, it's that simple. So. Any other questions or comments? Committee, what's your pleasure? I have a motion. I have a second. Rita, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Just want to make sure this has nothing to do with the police department right now, right? That's all out, and we'll discuss that later. Okay, yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carry.
All right, moving on. We have item D. Unfortunately, we did receive a letter from Kelly that she will be leaving us at the end of this year. She's in the blessed position of her life to be able to ride off in the sunset, retire. So this is a discussion for an HR director, and the desire would be to post it in-house first. So. You passed through C. Thank you. All right, well.
Let's complete D and we can go back to C.
We're going to bring it back.
Good, we're just gonna go out of order. We'll take D first.
Yeah, I'm just looking for an authorization. Go ahead and post it. I want to give the employees who work for you the opportunity to put in for the job. And if there's no qualified candidates, then we still have time to go out in September, advertise in appropriate journals, League of Municipalities. She's either retiring November 30th or December 31st. So if there is a person in the house that is qualified, I want to make sure we have a transition period so that, there could be some training by Mary or who the person is for the next couple of months, a couple hours a week, so that they understand quarterly reports, the other monthly things that she has to do, and the general routine of the position. So all I'm seeking is a motion permitting me to go ahead and have the position posted in-house.
I mean, at this point, obviously, there's a cost savings to that by posting it in-house. If we have someone that's qualified in-house that wishes to apply, obviously, they know the township, the way the township works, and, I think that's win-win. If we can get started out that way, if no one applies, or no one's qualified, then we'll always spend the money and go outside.
Yeah, it would also give an opportunity for a person to move up in salary, seeing
Yes.
an opportunity, and that would be very important.
Mhm. Well, part of it would be the transition learning period, and there are classes for HR personnel that they can take online. So if we know 3-4 months ahead of time, the person should be pretty much up to speed, not have the skill set that Mary Kelly has, but, be halfway there, maybe 2/3 of the way there. If somebody's on the job for 16 years, somebody doesn't step in their shoes, and the very first day they have the same knowledge that the person walked out the door has. So, but I'm looking to have at least a 3 or 4 month transition period if I have somebody in-house that we can, give them the opportunity to succeed at this position.
And the qualifications that we apply for in-house would be no different than if we went outside.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And they shouldn't be competing against people from the outside. If there's somebody qualified inside, they should have the first opportunity to get, to interview for the position, have the opportunity for this position. It's a staff position.
Second.
I have a second. This one, I guess we can do, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. We're gonna back up now, and we're gonna go to C, which is fee for appeal to planning board from HPC decisions.
So with this, when you adopted the ordinance, which allows appeals to the planning board, the land use administrator and I took a look at the fee schedule for applications to the planning board, and we couldn't find anything which we could file an application underneath it. Any matter heard by the planning board, there's an application fee associated with an escrow fee because the board professionals have to review something, the attorney has to write a DNR for whatever the ultimate decision is, and that's usually paid for by the applicant. So we looked at, and Danielle recommended the lowest application fee that we currently have is $75 and the lowest escrow number of $1,000 as this a minimal number to be paid. One of my concerns was if it was 0 and 0, any adverse decision of the HPC will automatically be appealed to the planning board because the person doesn't have to evaluate the merits of their case before they appeal because it's not going to cost them anything. And the planning board would be hearing probably every single one that was turned down by the HPC or modified. It would show up for a planning board meeting, and whether or not the person would just actually have a formal presentation or not, I don't know. But by establishing a nominal fee, it makes them evaluate their appeal before they would file it.
Can you give an example of an appeal?
If you live in a historic district and you want to change your windows and they told you you had to use blankety blank type of a window and the window costs $5,000 each, and you found something from Renovator's Warehouse which looked close to it but it was half the price, and the HPC said no, you can't put that window in, it's not authentic enough, they could appeal that, come to the planning board and say, I really think this window looks like this window. HPC said no, I'd like your consideration on something like that. Or if a house has had 3 roofs put on it and they have fiberglass shingles on the house for the last 30 years, they got to replace the roof, and the HPC says to them, oh, your house was built in 1920, we had slate roofs then, you have to put a slate roof on, and the person finds a imitation slate roof, which is not a real slate, but it looks like slate, and the HPC said to them, no, not close enough, you can't do that. They could bring an appeal like that to the planning board and say, we really would like to substitute this product for this one. We were told we couldn't. Planning board, what do you think? So they would have to submit some documents, somebody would have to review them, and that's why we looked at the escrow account.
So I'm a homeowner in a historic district. I want to paint my house. The HPC says no. They kick me in the shin, and in order for me to appeal, I'm going to have to pay money to appeal.
Okay.
After I've been placed in the HPC, some of them didn't even know they're in it. They were never sent letters stating that they were in it. I would be furious
Okay.
if you told me I had to pay $50 and $1,000 escrow because somebody decided I can't paint my house yellow.
Okay. At the current time, if they gave you that answer, you have no remedy but take them to Superior Court, which is going to cost you a lot more than $1,000 to hire an attorney and go challenge that.
So the argument is, well, this is cheaper.
This is less expensive, and if you believe that the homeowner shouldn't have to put $1,000, using your example is different than the 2 I used. It's just the color of the paint. If you want to create a hybrid system where residential property owners' application fee is a little bit less, their escrow is a little bit less, that's your discretion. That's why it's for discussion here. Staff just looked at it and said, okay, what is the minimum fees that we charge to get before the planning board? These are the numbers. But as elected officials, if you want to have a commercial rate and a residential rate, you can do that. That's within your discretion, or as you said, Deputy Mayor, if your discretion is you want to make it 0 and 0 for residential property owner, you know, that's an option also.
I do share Deputy Mayor's concerns. You know, again, I appreciate what your comments in the beginning. You know, if, I just don't want it to automatically be an appeal to the planning board, because some of the things that do come out have with merit. But there are situations where they should get relief and be able to come to the planning board to get it. I think that having a $1,000 escrow would be unobtainable for probably the majority of the residents living in our historic downtown. So I would be in favor, Deputy Mayor, of either reducing it, you know, not having a fee altogether, or a very nominal fee for the application to cover the cost for the employees. So.
I don't think that is fair to the people who have put 30 years into the HPC to maintain the HPC, the historic nature of our community. Now, the idea was, okay, if you want to change it, all right, if you want to have a different opinion of what you are required to have, that would be fair. Maybe $50 appeal, $500 escrow for homeowners would be more, but they are going to save a heck of a lot more than trying to appeal it to the Supreme Court. And if they were required to do like a slate roof that would cost an astronomical amount, they're going to save a lot of money by going that route. But it should not be something that someone can come into the planning board, have a beef, and say, I want to be recognized. There has to be a procedure to do that. And I appreciate all the work that the HPC has done over the years to maintain our historic nature. Maybe some of the pocket sites that were, you know, surprises, so to speak, could be, you know, looked at and changed. But I think basically our historic area is one of our gems, and I wouldn't want a wholesale movement of people coming to the planning board and wanting to paint their house a bright green or a purple or a pink. That was not acceptable in that time. So that is my opinion.
I'm all for having a fee and an escrow, but in order for me to jump on board with that, I want to go back to 2015 and make everybody have to send out a letter from the HPC, certified letter, to every single property, and go the way the 2015 ordinance says. And if they don't want to be in it, then they go and they say, I don't want to be in it. But to go and say now that in order that you have to pay money to try to do something, that's just not fair. That's.
I'd like to see that ordinance from 2015, according to my discussion with the head of the HPC, that was not correct. And so, yeah, we could have a discussion on that. But what I'm saying, those people who are in the historic area and who desire to change the color of their house, it shouldn't be a bright green or a ridiculous color that they decide is their fancy. You know, it is a historical area, and it should conform to those desires. Now, if the real estate people had not given proper, you know, notification that this was a historic area, and left it up to the people to ask that, which is it's how it is in New Jersey, then it was on their watch to ask what is involved. So
I just think we may be straying off of what we're trying to discuss. The discussion is the fee schedule for the appeal to the planning board from HPC decisions, and whether or not we want to have a standard fee that is across lines for commercial and residential, or do we want to have a sliding fee schedule or fee schedule that may be different for residents, or do we want to eliminate that altogether? Let's try to limit the scope to that. We all know how we got here. We've had countless discussions in front of this board. So the discussion tonight is, how do we want to address the fee schedule?
How about if we leave it the way the 75 and the 1,000 for commercial, cut the 1,000 in half to 500 for residential, and lower the application fee to $25 or something for residential.
or 50.
This way it keeps everyone in their public employment, and then who's to say that they're gonna chew up the whole 500 escrow?
And again, I've stated from this several times, it's not a foregone conclusion that just because you appeal a decision from the HPC, that it's going to be overturned at the planning board level. You have 9 members that live and are vested in this community, the same as those individuals that are going to sit in judgment of what they feel may or may not be correct. So, I mean, I'm just happy that I think they'll get more consideration from township residents that volunteer their time than going through the court system and spending, as you said, a tremendous amount of more money. So,
I can't help but wonder how many people now, if they get shot down by the HPC and then say, oh, well, I got to put out $550 to go to the planning board. Well, you know what? I'm just not going to fix my house up. And just leave it the way it
That has
is.
been the case with some people.
and that's the reason
And
why we're having this
that's-
discussion. So, Deputy Mayor, I mean, your comments are well respected on this dais. So, what is your opinion on the fee schedule?
I'd say 0.
That would be ridiculous. I would say 75 and 1,000. Anyone who has gone before the planning board has to pay money. And, no one should be exempt from doing that. I would say for the homeowner, $50 for the appeal and $500 for the escrow.
Ms. Leak, I believe you have a point, especially when it comes to commercial. They would have representation, and our professionals would probably even have to take a look at that. So I would agree with that fee schedule for that. I do think, though, for the average homeowner, I don't know that I can get all the way to where Deputy Mayor wants to get. I could be satisfied with a $50 fee and 0 escrow because with all due respect, if they're coming before the planning board, there isn't going to be professional review. You're talking about time for individuals that are already volunteering their time to make the determination on the evidence presented. So,
No, I disagree with, there is a professional review, especially those people who are involved in the historic nature of the township and at the state level, and having litigation or having his advice. It's going to cost money. And I know this is off the beaten path, but when we were faced with another home on Park Road, it cost us, our facility, $5,000 in legal fees to just have representation here.
but that was on a commercial establishment that wanted to expand a pre-existing
But,
non-conforming
yeah, but
use.
it was affecting 100 people that were in this
But
place.
I get it. I mean, we're not comparing apples to apples here. You're talking about a
Well,
pre-existing
I
non-conforming
wouldn't
use.
say everyone is a poor person that owns a.
I didn't, no, again, please don't put words in my mouth. What I said was, coming off of obviously a pandemic, what the country's been through, the fact is that someone that finds out that they have a few dollars disposable income and may want to improve their property, it may be more burdensome for them to have to put that up as an individual homeowner when there's not going to be reviewed by a professional. So I don't see the need for escrow.
Well, why wouldn't it be reviewed by professionals?
Why would they? Because they're not the ones making the decision.
Well,
they're not the ones
they're-
making the decision on whether or not it's historic in nature or not. The individuals that are volunteer on the board are going to make that decision.
No.
No, they do not.
They have the right to.
And I'm sure that if the person's appealing, he has the right to even bring a professional with him.
Well, that's gonna cost him money.
So the HPC made it without professionals.
Well, that's been 30 years of experience with, they've gone through different, courses and what is to be the requirement of the HPC. It isn't just, oh, well, we have HPC, let's just have a free-for-all. It's greatly diminishing the ability of the HPC to make decisions based on, it's a huge document. It isn't just something that they look at and say, well, this has to be. It's written, and they go along with what is historic, and they are learned people. Now, are you saying their time is a waste of time?
Again, I'm going to ask you, please, I find myself having to say this at every meeting, don't put words in my mouth. That is not what I said.
Well, I think there should be an escrow.
Ms. Martino's caught it accurately what I said.
Okay, well, I think there should be an escrow.
And I just think it's overreaching government going into the pockets of somebody who's trying to make their house nicer. They already own their
Well,
house. They wanna
there's
paint their
a
house,
lot
they
of
wanna add a fence,
arbitrary
whatever.
things that they could do to make the community look wretched. Now stop it.
So, Peter,
Thank you.
with moving forward, we've had some discussion up here. What do we need to amend an ordinance regarding this? Is that what the recommendation is going to be?
Yes, we need to amend the fee schedule for the planning board ordinance for fees. So all I need tonight is direction, a consensus. It could be through motion to set the fee at 75 and 1,000 and 50 and 0, whatever it is, so we can prepare it for introduction.
Oh, I'm voting no.
That's what the proposal is. Deputy Mayor Vitale would like it to be 0, and Committeewoman Link would like it to be standard at 75 and 1,000.
And, well, we can have the in-between, which is for commercial 75 and 1,000, and for homeowners 50 and 500, or 25 and 500, because you're going to be here faced with a lot of discussion, and the planning board's time is valuable. The lawyers that you have here are valuable. And so on, and even if you say the professionals don't need to review it, there is time that is consumed by this, action. So that is my proposal.
Just make one last pitch for a residential escrow. The solicitor has to write a DNR at the end of it, and the applicant always pays that fee. So I would say that you would need to have at least a $200 escrow fee just to cover the cost of preparing the DNR for the applicant that comes before you, instead of having 0. But whatever your pleasure is, I'll prepare the appropriate ordinance. But that was just my last pitch as to why there should be some nominal fee paid for a residential application. Yeah, because they have to rely upon something. If the planning board is making a ruling, the end of the day, they have to adopt the DNR to memorialize their action. Well, they're not coming to the planning board. I don't know how they act, but all the planning board's decisions have to be memorialized in a resolution as if the formal actions they've taken. So the attorney always charges the applicant for the cost of preparing that. So that's what I'm saying is that I don't know what your planning board solicitor charges, but I've never seen a planning board solicitor prepare one of these things for less than $200. They usually have an hour and a half's worth of work, and no disrespect to attorneys, I don't know why it takes so long.
No disrespect.
Rodney, what do you think? That's what I want to know is what Rodney thinks.
So at this point,
Yeah. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been on Main Street quite often. I've talked to quite a few people on Main Street. I've talked to quite a few businesses on Main Street. They're all in the historic district. And I've heard the complaints about what they have to go through with the HPC. And when they hear this, if this goes through, they are going to see the Township of Hamilton as being not business friendly, and it's just another hurdle that they're going to have to get over. So you guys vote the way you want, no matter what it says. I'm voting no if there's any money involved.
Well, I think you're wrong in that
I think
that
you're wrong.
decision, and
there was no
and I
need for you
think
to say that you thought I was
I
wrong.
think that
Whatever.
the people along the HPC now they have an opportunity to come for an appeal. We did that, okay? We passed that. Now they don't have to go to the Supreme Court and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to get their way. And now you're going to say anyone who can come in and wants to come into our planning board and just 0-0, that's ridiculous. Well, that's how I feel.
There appears to be consensus that commercial is 75 and 1,000.
I think we've reached that
Yes.
consensus. Are we good there on commercial?
Yes.
You good on commercial? All right, Peter, at this point, based on the comments that the committee said, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjust the fee schedule, keep it at 75 to 1,000 for commercial, and $50 and $200 for residential. With that, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Rita, could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
No.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no, motion carries.
Great. Jim, what item am I on? We are on
On-
3E.
Gypsy
going through.
moth.
We jumped there, 3E, participation in gypsy moth survey.
This is a simple one. The county notified us that they saw some defoliation of gypsy moth in Hamilton Township. They're requesting permission to do a survey. I just need a motion authorizing the mayor or the clerk to execute the document to send back to them. We want to
But Judy
participate.
and I totally disagree on this.
Yeah,
You
we
like
got-
gypsy
we
moth
got
and she
one-
doesn't.
one gypsy moth spray around. No.
Shouldn't they be called transient moths at this point?
I believe so.
Are they going to pay a fee?
We will entertain a motion whether or not we want to have the survey completed. There is no obligation on our part. It's just,
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Rita, have you signed this in the past?
The administrator signs it, but
Okay.
if you want, we can.
I
have the
can
mayor
sign it.
Okay.
Next, we have 4, public hearing, adoption of ordinances. The first one is A 1962-2021, an ordinance to amend Chapter 225 of the Township Code entitled Parks and Beaches, specifically Article 1 entitled Cove Area and Swimming. Chief, do you have any input on this, or you? Watching too much Olympics.
Yeah, that should be a vote, not a climb.
So this amendment is for us to have enforcement powers when people are swimming after hours. Right now, we can tell them to leave, and as soon as we leave, they jump back in the water. So this way, we can give them a warning, and if they don't want to listen to us, they can be fined if we choose to do that. So that's basically what this amendment is.
Any questions, comments?
Is it also for the days that it's closed?
Yes. Anytime that there's not lifeguards on duty.
Do we have a fine amount in mind?
I believe it starts out at $100.
Yes.
And then it goes up from there.
Yeah, whatever the violation fee which currently exists in Chapter 225 is the same violation, and I think the chief is right, it's a minimum $200 fine.
But as the chief pointed out, our
And give a
desire
warning.
is to curb the activity, issue a warning first. Yeah, thank you, chief. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on ordinance number 1962-2021? If so, please come up to the mic and introduce yourself. None? Move to close the public portion.
So move.
Have a motion, second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, committee, what's your pleasure? I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Rita, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Batali?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no. Ordinance is adopted.
All right, next we have 4B, ordinance 1963-2021, an ordinance of the Township of Hamilton adopting an amendment to the redevelopment plan for the entirety of the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, to permit cannabis establishments, distributors, and delivery services. Again, we've had a great amount of conversation with this.
Oh, which one? Never mind.
Committee, before we open it to public, is there any additional questions, comments on this ordinance that we've discussed in great detail? Hearing none,
Emily is
I,
present to answer any questions.
I was gonna open it to public, see if there's any questions, and that way she could answer at the same time. Is that okay? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on ordinance 1963-2021?
Gentlemen, want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Laurie Smith. I don't know, do you need my address?
If you could, just.
Okay, it's 4877 Hawthorne Lane, and I would like it on record because of my position that I am here tonight as a resident of Hamilton Township. I just want to state that I appreciate the zoning ordinance that has been put out there for this legislation. And you certainly limited the type of licenses and the conditional uses that were applied per each zone. In most zones, you've limited the number of licenses allowed, created a buffer not only between licensed establishments, but also where schools, parks, and recreational facilities are concerned, and prohibited it in all residential areas. Furthermore, with respect to the 2 commercial zones where dispensaries are allowed, it limited the sites to the front on the Black Horse Pike, and each permitted zone, you have added the requirement to address odor control, which is becoming an issue in other communities that have allowed cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, wholesale cannabis businesses. I would just like to point out, I would prefer it to have been an opt-out situation from what is going to be happening with the youth in our county as well as our township. But I know as of for the August 21st date, that is not possible at this point. Because even if you were decided tonight to vote no and it did not pass, you do not have time to opt out. The one question I do have, I did not see in the ordinance, how the township wants to proceed with on-site, on-premise usage. Because I believe that was also in the state law for the township for the municipalities to determine. So that is just my question, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Emily, you want to take that?
With regard to the on-site usage, I think that would be a separate ordinance that we would have to go over with the chief and with Mr. Miller and with the committee to make that determination. We've discussed briefly that it would be similar to anywhere where alcohol is prohibited in public. There would be no on-site consumption. The ordinance itself is an amendment to the redevelopment plan. And so that gives the committee greater control over any type of establishment that would come into town. And any licensee would have to enter into a redevelopment agreement. And so that is something that can be discussed at that time. And those limitations and restrictions can be put on to any license holder through not only legislation, but through a redevelopment agreement and just a contract between that license holder and the township. In addition, we haven't seen the regulations yet. And because of that, we are at a great disadvantage because we're not exactly sure what the regulatory commission is going to require of each of the municipalities who ultimately ends up with a licensee in their midst. So we are trying to take this at a fast enough pace not to lose out on any opportunities, but at a slow enough pace to give us some time to digest those regulations and work them into a redevelopment agreement with any potential license holder.
The regulations are, how they grow the pot and what kind of pot they have and all the specifications that go along with qualifying what they are and who goes and sees that that's indeed what they're doing.
So we haven't seen the regulations.
And
So
how are we going to hire someone who's going to go and regulate it at about $100,000 a year? Or what is our regulatory thought on this?
So it's not a township regulatory process. It is a state regulatory commission. And the state is going to regulate the license holders. And they will be doing the safety inspections and they will be doing, my understanding, that they will be doing all of these things. But we haven't seen regulations yet, so it's impossible for us to give you a definitive answer, which is why we wanted to take this in the direction that we've gone through an amendment to the redevelopment plan so that the township has additional levels of control over those types of establishments. If we find that the regulations don't provide sufficient protection to the township, we can then, through our redevelopment process, add those additional protections into agreements with potential license holders.
Yeah, well, as a teacher for 11 years, I did not like seeing people come into my classroom smoked up on pot.
I can't imagine anyone would.
And that's what was happening. It is not controlled by parents or 21 and over. And there were masses of kids that would come in just, oh, I don't care whether I do homework, whether I get an A on a test, or, the lackadaisical attitude. Now, how are we supposed to control that within the community? Oh, well, the parents can go and smoke their brains off, but what about their kids? What about
Even
I understand.
notwithstanding this ordinance,
I understand.
those issues that you're speaking of, we would still have to deal with. And none of us, this is something that's new to everyone in the state of New Jersey. Those things are gonna have to work out. This ordinance only deals with where they could possibly do the different classifications.
Okay,
We all have strong opinions, I'm sure, one way or the other, on whether it should be legalized or not. The simple fact is, it did overwhelmingly pass in excess of 70%. But, you know, as Ms. Gibbons said, you know, we're gonna have to wait from the state to see exactly what they're gonna impose, what type of inspection processes, and what they're gonna impose on from a state level. And then, you know, we would have some guidance from that. And we would have the option at that point to strengthen it, accept it, strengthen it, and go from there. But,
yeah,
that's
I
not-
understand this is for us to get in line with being recognized to it.
This
to
is
have
for
them.
us to control where the individual licenses outlined in the ordinance would be permitted to be grown, distributed, and/or says delivery services, that's what this ordinance is doing. So we've set parameters that they can be in certain areas. They'd have to be in a standalone building. They can't be in combination with any other facility, and so on and so forth throughout the ordinance. The social aspect of it, which you have great concern over, and I understand why. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to be able to cover it in this ordinance. We're gonna have to wait for state rules and then see what the enforcement process will be.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that you have done in isolating the places that it would be acceptable. And I know it was a lot of work to do that. Yeah, I just, you know, I just have a very bad feeling against it. And I guess I'm one of the 30% that voted against
And
it.
that's true. I mean, that's the reason why it did pass at that level, because, you know, with that being said, there is a group of individuals that went out and said no, that they didn't want it. So, I mean, because I'm sure they share similar concerns that you share. So.
And I did want to mention, too, that the ordinance that was initially introduced for the permitted conditional uses in each of the zones, the agriculture or the forest area, it was missing the specific limitation for the class, each of the classes. We limited class 1 in the body of the document, but we wanted to clarify, based on comments from the planning board, that not more than 2 of each class of licensed business would be permitted in any of the zones. So that clarification was made in the final ordinance. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Mr. Miller reminded me.
In the ordinance that we have here.
Yes, yes.
Just to your point, Mr. Lynn, when this did go to the planning board, it was discussed at the planning board level to come back to us for a recommendation for adoption. It did pass unanimously. Several of the planning board members shared your thoughts, exactly the way you outlined it. Still understood that they were voting on it to come back as a recommendation, but they did put their same concerns on the record. They did vote in the affirmative, but they did put their concerns on the record. So I certainly understand where you're coming from.
I will yield to Solicitor Salmon, but I believe that what Emily just laid out to you are minor amendments because in effect you had no number on them and now you're making it 2. So I don't believe it's something that has to be re-advertised, that you could adopt the amendments and adopt the ordinance as amended tonight if you so choose to.
I have given that.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee, any other questions or comments? We did open it to the public, but I know that you wanted to speak earlier, so at this point, we will reopen again to the public so you can have your comments. Yes, please. That's okay. No.
Hugh Giordano, Blackwood, New Jersey, but I'm here today as a representative of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, UFCW. We're a national labor union of 1.3 million hardworking families, and we are the official labor union that represents cannabis workers from seed to sale under the guise of the AFL-CIO. We support this ordinance because it creates good jobs. Mr. Mayor, these jobs are highly educated. They have degrees in botany, horticulture, and chemistry. Our current members here in New Jersey have those degrees. On top of that, we have pharmacists that work in the retail facilities. So this is not an HBO special. or a Showtime special where you see about a bunch of potheads. These are professionals with degrees, some of them with doctorates. On top of that, S21, which is the adult use bill, has very strong labor language in it, which protects workers' rights. And we should be proud of that because Connecticut and Virginia stole our same labor language here in New Jersey to make sure that when these big corporations come in, that they actually take care of constituents, excuse me, and create living wage jobs with healthcare, sick time, vacation, dental, vision, retirement, and basic rights on the job. Also in S21, there's language in there that talks about build out and retrofit of facilities using union building trades, such as IBEW, steam fitters, and carpenters, to make sure that you get young people also involved in the building trades, apprenticeship programs. So it's a shovel to sale union job if done properly. One of the things I want to suggest is the City of Bayonne's merit-based application system. Some of the things that you brought up, specifically with children getting cannabis. The one thing I can say is that in the City of Bayonne's merit-based application system, it talks about security measures, making sure who they're going to hire. Are they going to hire retired police officers? Are they going to have the cameras in place that they're needed and attached to the state? For example, right now, all the cameras go directly to the state police. 24 hours, 7 days a week, those workers and patients are under supervision of the state police, and they have armed guards. So the only person that's going to be giving out cannabis is the drug dealer, and hopefully having a legal market will get rid of that to help to some extent. Besides that, it's up to parents to watch their children. Kids are going to be kids, but at least it won't be laced with whatever is out there from the drug dealer. So that's the main thing. On top of that, there's also in the merit-based application, besides security and labor standards, they also look at environmental standards. If they polluted in Colorado or use illegal pesticides in Maine, they're going to do it here. Also, local ownership. You get points for local ownership. And it mimics the state. The state has a merit-based application system in medical. And right now, the rules and regs having to do with the Cannabis Commissioner have to deal with the applicants. Not S21 makes it very clear that you have home rule, which you're taking control of right now. So the rules and regs coming out will have to do with the applications. I would really suggest that a merit-based application system be put in place. That way you can pick and choose based on merit and not based on just giving a letter of support. It's a way to make sure that you get a good employer who's going to create good jobs and not just 7-Eleven jobs, because we don't need those in South Jersey. Also, I have no problem offering you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and committee persons a tour of the Garden State Dispensary, which was the first to open up of the original 6 to go union, and they're very transparent. It's a seed to sale operation. That's why I always suggest that, so you can see it all in one place and not have to travel to different places to see it all. I've taken many other mayors. I've even taken the president of the League of Municipalities through. So if you would like to see that, it might calm some nerves a little bit. You can see the professionalism yourself and see how a union establishment actually runs. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Kerrigan?
Charlie, I'm against Chapter 135. Is that the one we're doing now?
No, Mr.
That's the
Kerrigan.
next one.
We are on
B?
B, yes.
I'll have to come up again, huh?
Tell you, you let me know, I'll let you know on the next one, all right?
Okay.
Get me straight now.
I'm against all new taxes anyway.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this? All right, hearing none. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Can we close the public hearing, please?
Close public comment.
We have a motion. Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, committee, what's your pleasure on 1963-2021?
So moved.
Procedurally, you have to make a motion to accept the amendments as proposed, and then once that's adopted, you then make a motion to adopt the ordinance as amended.
I will amend my motion to, like to move ordinance 1963-2021 with the amendments that were added.
There's a motion and a second. Rita, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Yes. Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mayor King.
Yes.
All yes and adopted.
Next, we'll move on to the other portion of this is 1964-2020,
No, you have to
2021.
do the,
An ordinance to amend Code of the Township of Hamilton by establishing Chapter 135 entitled Cannabis Taxes and Civil Penalties to impose a local cannabis transfer tax and user tax and establish civil penalties for violation of an ordinance or regulation governing the number of cannabis establishments, distributors, or delivery services that may operate in the Township of Hamilton or their location, manner, or times of operation. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? Mr. Kerrigan?
Like I was saying before, I'm against Chapter 135 because we don't need any new taxes. I'm against taxes, period.
I appreciate that.
And
I realize that this is a tax on just cannabis products that would or could possibly be sold in our community.
This will not make my property tax go up, will it?
Well, actually, Mr. Kerrigan,
Might make it go
in a
down.
roundabout way, if we were successful enough, it could make them come down.
Oh, wow.
Assuming that we get the licenses that the state hands out here in Hamilton Township,
Yeah.
there could be significant tax revenue that the township would realize from it.
Because what we need is lower taxes and a smaller government. That's what we need.
Comments, as always.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it.
Anyone else in the public that would wish to speak on 1964-2021? I'll entertain a motion. Motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, committee, what's your pleasure on ordinance 1964-2021?
Make a motion moving ordinance 1964-2021.
We have a motion? I have a second. Rita, could I get a roll call on this one, please?
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King.
Yes.
All yes and
Next, we'll
adopted.
move on to 5, introduction of ordinances. The public hearing will be held on August 16th, 2021. First, we have 5A, 1965-2021, an ordinance to amend Chapter 238 of the Code of the Township of Hamilton entitled Property Maintenance to regulate invasive plant species. This was brought up at the last meeting. This is regarding bamboo, invasive nature of it. Mr. Deputy Mayor brought this to light. Committee?
I know bamboo is the one that is, but you say invasive species? There are a ton of invasive species here in Hamilton Township. You look at all the little vines that are growing and the weeds that are growing, they're all invasive species, so maybe you might want to be a little bit more specific.
If you go into the first page of the ordinance, read, down to Article 3. Article 3, Chapter B will give you the definition of invasive species. So bamboo was the one that was most prevalent. We covered it as a whole with invasive species. So anyone that is planting something on their property that would have the tendency to be invasive to their neighbor's property would be covered under this. It would have to, upon someone bringing it to their attention, would have to eradicate that and take it off their neighbor's property.
Okay.
Not allow it to invade their neighbor's property.
Who made the definition of invasive species? I'm a biologist, I know what invasive species are.
I'm not.
How about all the dandelions that grow next to your, and you've already treated for dandelions? Are we gonna say, you gotta get rid of all your dandelions? They're invasive species.
You don't unless your dandelions are beating up your neighbor's dandelions.
Well, it's an invasive, I'm just being a devil's advocate there on this. I know
In
that,
the ordinance, your duty is to combine your invasive species. So you can have all the invasive species you want on your property, but you can't let it cross into your neighbor's property. And the list of about a dozen different plants which are spreading or running type pretty much evolved throughout the state of New Jersey. We didn't make up the list ourselves. We stole somebody else's ordinance, who stole it from somebody else, who stole it from somebody else. But this definition of invasive
pine
species,
barrens.
I can't tell you what the original source came from, but the list of invasive species is pretty common throughout Atlantic Cape May County for what municipalities have defined as invasive species.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Rodney, did you have a comment about, someone had talked to you about the problem of the bamboo? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, this doesn't prohibit somebody from growing bamboo on their property. It just prohibits them from letting it grow onto their neighbor's property. So if they can confine it, they can still use bamboo as a screening device on their property, things like that. They just have to confine it to their property.
You understand that a 9-iron works good on bamboo also.
So I've been told.
All right, committee, what's your pleasure, please? Need a motion to introduce?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we'll move on to B. Ordinance 1966-2021, an ordinance to vacate the public alley connected to Second Avenue and situated in Block 758 of the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, and to release and relinquish the public rights therein. For those, Peter, you have a little background on this, or
I yield to Steve on this one.
Poison ivy is one of the
This,
invasive species.
This has to do with the Hope Fire Company, the redevelopment project started a long time ago. Mr. Parrish bid on, when an RFP went out, gosh, 2019, maybe it was. And through the pandemic, we've been kind of delayed, but part of the proposal and the agreement between the township and Mr. Parrish was that the alleyway, which everyone thought was the driveway next door to in between the cemetery and the building, and everyone thought that belonged with the property, that would be vacated and transferred over to the township lot and then collectively sold to Mr. Parrish. And so this is fulfilling that obligation in the redevelopment agreement. And then, so the full width of the right-of-way, the 15 feet that is next to the building, the alley that in between the cemetery and the house, is going to be vacated and become part of the house lot. And half of the alleyway behind will become part of the lot. And the other half, I believe, is going to be dedicated, should the property owner behind want it, to the property owner behind. And Mr. Philippone's office has prepared the legal descriptions. They're part of the ordinance. We're just fulfilling the obligations of the Township Committee pursuant to the redevelopment agreement that was entered into in October of last year.
just for the public and the Township Committee, this property, if we're referencing it by lot and block, this is the American Legion building in the center of town, behind the cemetery. So we've been looking to see this project get jump-started and get done for quite a long time now.
And I'm assuming this is just one more roadblock that will hopefully get that project moving.
So the redevelopment agreement has been entered into, and Mr. Parrish is ready to actually do some emergency repairs to the garage in the back. And so he's, as long as he gets the correct permits, he'll be able to go and do that pursuant to the agreement that he has with the township. And he's prepared to move forward as soon as we get this ordinance in place and we can get the deeds filed appropriately. Then we can move forward with transfer of ownership. And he has an obligation to complete his repairs within a year from when he gets it. He pulls his building permits to work on the house.
Now,
And-
he's in conformance with the historic area, correct?
So he
That's
knows
a
his,
historic
he
building.
knows his obligations. We have just recently gotten the SHPO, Historic Trust Preservation Easement, in place for him, and he understands that his obligations are with regard to maintaining the exterior conditions only through SHPO.
Is it going to be residential?
Yes.
Not going to be a coffee house or anything?
This my understanding that it is. He's converting it back to a residential property.
Okay. What access does the cemetery have to go and, you
So
know?
there is a fence up that
Uh-huh.
separates the cemetery from that drive. And it's my understanding, I'm not familiar with the way it's been used, but it's my understanding that it's not been used by the cemetery at all, that the thought was, from all of us, that that was the access driveway for this property. And then through a little digging, we found that it was actually an alleyway, a right-of-way, as opposed to a driveway.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody wants to drive their car into the cemetery.
Well, there's a fence up, so no one can.
And so
No
how
one-
do
no
they
one-
maintain the cemetery?
Actually, Judy, if I may, only because Emily may not be aware, there is a gate right just before the property. There's a gate there for access to the cemetery.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned that,
I get it.
you know, because people like to drive to the, well, some do, or just walk, because it's not a big,
Well, the
Yeah.
alleyway itself only went to the back of the house and then turned. So it didn't go further down, and there is no, based on what Mr. Philippone, the photographs, there's no access through this side of the gate
oh, okay,
into the cemetery.
okay. He needs that access. So.
Any other additional questions or comments? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
So moved?
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, next we'll move on to 6A, awards of bids, contracts, and change orders. The first one we have is a resolution to award bid 2021-04, contract for cooperative fleet maintenance and management services to First Vehicle Services of Cincinnati, Ohio, for a period of 11/1/21 through 9/30/24 in the amount of $1,735,344.42. Additional cost for non-target hourly rate is $48 an hour. Non-target rate, overtime rate is $55 an hour. Mr. Miller, would you just elaborate for?
Yes, this is for vehicle maintenance. We contract that to a third party, the Public Works Garage. They are the existing provider, and they were the only bidder on the job. The bid is consistent with money that was appropriated in this year's budget. And if you look at the additional years, there are a number of runs that are at $500,000 a year for them to continue doing the same work. And Public Works is satisfied with their performance. They're pleased that they are the successful bidder.
And it's important to note that when we did this, we used our negotiating power, being a larger township, to include the MUA in the agreement so they get the same rate that we are getting.
Is it a different one? Is that a while ago, Rodney? Yeah.
I just got clarification from the CFO is that there was a different vendor before this company got it, but the new company hired the project manager, so it's the same manager, probably most of the same employees, but the vendor has changed. A lot of times on these contracts, they will, somebody will outbid it, but then they'll go hire the people that worked there before, make them their employees, and you got the same people providing the services that you had before. So Rodney, you're correct that the company that previously had it before this contract was not based in Cincinnati.
Mr. Singer? Are we on solid ground here with that explanation?
Believe you, yes.
First, input, Mr. Singer's termination committee? Questions, comments?
Yeah, it's good.
Same rate. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. 2021-04. 6A. I have a motion. I have a second. Rita, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we'll move on to resolution number B, resolution authorizing the purchase of 10 2022 Ford Utility Interceptor hybrids from Winter Ford under New Jersey State contract. The cost is not to exceed $344,826. This was provided in capital.
Yes.
And
Killing me, man.
this is just, it seems like this is more, but it's just, we're finally getting to the point where we're actually going to buy them. So.
And they're hybrids too.
Same as my wife.
They were
I
on
can't afford
sale.
all the money
I
to save
saved
it.
money.
Committee?
Second.
Motion in a second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Greg, you promised to wash and wax these things weekly? Okay. Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Employ
That I did.
young teenagers?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
I would recommend against that. I don't want to have the liability of those kids being hurt, in the parking lot.
Yeah, because they could cut off their thumb or something.
All right, we're gonna move on to 6C, resolution to cancel remaining contract with Klein Construction, Inc., bid 2015-01A, which is part of the reforestation plan as part of the NJDEP no net loss forestry grant. The remaining amount of the contract is $17,896.
Oh. Remaining amount?
From what I understand, these were trees that ended up dying, and then they just didn't get replaced, correct?
Cancel remaining contract.
That died, and they did get replaced at Memorial Park.
But what about the trees at the, on the parking lot? The ones that were planted perimeter to our parking lot, they died too.
Out front, at the parking lot across the street?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I,
think that's.
I don't know the answer. I don't know. There was a listing of trees. It was part of a Remington urban plan. It was a listing of trees that, at the end of the 2-year maintenance period, they did not survive. So we contacted, NJDEP, the person in charge of that grant, and we were able to move those trees over to Memorial Park, the replacement trees.
Oh, okay.
What's the remaining amount?
All this resolution does is cancel the outstanding balance on the client company contract because he filed for Chapter 7, they're no longer in business, then he's not going to get the money, so we're just canceling the unexpended portion of it. There'll be a subsequent resolution on the no net loss program to close that out. I don't know what the DEP is going to do. They were supposed to make inspections in 2019, determined they had 95% success rate. In most towns, they never showed up. They didn't show up in 2020. So it's going to be very difficult for them to show up in 2021, 4 years later, and say that you didn't hit the 95% success. Most towns in 2019, when they did come out, either relocated trees or the contractor under the maintenance bond replaced them. But then they haven't been out for more than 2 years again to inspect. I know where I previously worked, we had 3 phases of ours. They never showed up to do any inspections for phase 3. They did do phase 1 and 2. And we took a position that it's been 4 years since we planted them. You never determined the loss ratio. You got to sign off on the project and let's move on.
So basically, we're passing this, and then there's a chance the DEP could come back and say, you still owe some trees.
They're going to be hard pressed because the responsibility rests with the contractor who had to post a maintenance bond for the 2 years. And they were supposed to show up in those 2 years to tell us what trees failed and what trees they want to replace. So if they didn't make their inspections within the 2 years, I think we have a debatable issue with them that the township is not stepping in the shoes of the contractor and go plant 70 trees, 50 trees, whatever they believe that number is, because they failed to perform their duties on that time. So they can't determine whether the tree died in year 2, year 3, or year 3.5.
In addition to that, you have the automatic stay of the bankruptcy.
Automatic.
Stay, meaning any action against the bankrupt estate is automatically stopped.
Okay, for the no net loss.
Second.
I have a
Okay.
motion and a second.
Okay.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Patali?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we have D, resolution authorizing acceptance of proposal for engineering services for 2021 road reconstruction program to Engineering Design Associates, amount not to exceed $55,000. Have a motion? Second?
Second.
Motion is second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Patali?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we have the consent agenda, items 7A through F and H. Ready? Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll do A through G.
Now, G is your A through F.
Oh, that's right, for
Then
Glen
H.
Air, right.
Do you want to pull
A
something?
through F. Just, well, H.
Okay, so we're going to pull F. I have a motion for A through F. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
I didn't hear the second on that. I'm sorry. Carl Patel made the motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded? I did. Mr.
Thank
Cheek?
you.
All right, that passes. Val, floor is yours.
This is the resolution for the tax levy referendum be placed on the ballot
That's correct. This
for
is-
open space.
Yes, it is, as you just said, it's for open space. We're gonna take it to the voters, as a referendum for them to make the decision on whether they want to set aside a collection rate of 2 cents per $100 of equalized value to be dedicated to the Municipal Open Space Trust Fund.
2 cents.
2 cents, that's what we discussed, came up with.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just wanted to pull it and make sure everybody's well aware of it, that it's gonna be on the ballot, hopefully.
Yep, this is for the public as a whole to make the decision on
Yep.
whether or not they want this. Anyone that wishes to discuss the merits of it further, don't hesitate to reach out. But this is the right way to do this. You put it in front of the public, let the public make the decision.
I make a motion, move 7H.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed, ayes have it. Next, we'll move on to personnel, which we have none. We'll move on to approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, July 6th, 2021.
Second.
Motion,
Second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Next, we'll move on to B, minutes, executive session meeting minutes, July 6th, 2021.
So moved.
I have a motion, second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
C, minutes, special executive session meeting minutes of July 7th, 2021.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion. And a second.
Judy seconded.
Second. Rita, once again, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we have D, minutes, special executive session meeting minutes of July 20th, 21.
So moved.
Motion, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek? Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
You'd have this one, Rich.
I was going to say, Committee in Chief, you have no worries that Mr. Vitale, Deputy Mayor's going to move this. I can guarantee you that. Next, we have bill list. Bill list total $7,911,487.28. And again, I have no doubt that
This
Mr.
is
Vitale will not
zero.
move this. I have a motion. Second. Rita, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek?
You have to vote on it.
Mr. Gishard? Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
All right. Mr. Administrator, is there anything that you have to add this evening?
No, sir.
Appreciate that. Short and sweet. Mr. Solicitor?
Nope.
Wow, look at this. Steve, you're going to ruin this, are you really?
Of course.
We always look forward to hearing from you. Mr. Engineer?
Yeah, Mayor and Committee, I'll keep it brief. Lake Lenape Dam, I just want to report that WSP, the design engineer hired by the county, delineated the freshwater wetlands as part of their contract. They did that last week. They're still waiting to hear on the powerhouse from Pinelands and DEP on their applications. Atlantic Avenue, if you've been out or have seen, South State began milling last Friday. They milled today. They have one more day of milling on Atlantic Avenue, the side streets. Asphalt will go down Thursday and Friday, so we'll be substantially complete Thursday and Friday. I ask that everybody try to stay away from that area. One lane is open at all times, but if you could try to stay away from Atlantic Avenue, at least until next Monday, we'd appreciate it.
It's just from the post office up, right?
It's from just past the post office. There's a special services has a bus maintenance garage there. The next drive was from there to the jail, to the justice complex.
I'll try.
Okay. I just want to report New York Avenue. I put in my place in my report no changes, and what I mean by that is the county is still on schedule. They have bid opening. They invited 3 contractors. Bid openings are tomorrow for those 3 bids. The precast decking is scheduled to be delivered October 8th, and they are informing me that the completion date of the project will be on or about mid-November, they're saying Thanksgiving. They should be done with that project. The road program for 2021, we did not have a road program in 2020 due to COVID. 2021, we have a road program of 3 streets, Grand Avenue, South Avenue, and Harley. The plans for reconstruction of those 3 roads are going to be advertised this Thursday, bid opening on the 26th, and September 7th, we hope to have this in front of committee to award a contract, provided that these projects come in on or under budget. We're putting these projects out to bid with alternates, just to make sure we don't go over budget. We know the cost of asphalt has gone up slightly this year. We still think we have a good handle on it. So I hope to be bringing to the committee a recommendation on a contractor award on September 7th, that we can get 3 roads paved, over the, in the months of, start the end of September, October, and be done before November 1st. That's my goal. We have 2 grant applications. Last Friday was the due date, and we made it in time. They have a new process for applying for grants. So we were successful in the state of New Jersey accepting our grant application for Atlantic Avenue. This is where you gave me a resolution a month ago. Atlantic Avenue, the continuation from just past the post office, where the Special Services has a bus garage, all the way down to the traffic signal. In other words, past Public Works. So we filed an application for that next phase of Atlantic Avenue. There's a Safe Routes to School application, that's due the end of October. We're going to apply for Farragut Avenue. We think it's a good application. It'll pick up St. Vincent de Paul. It'll pick up Shaner School. Any replacement or need of sidewalk, any crosswalks. It'll be that application. Deputy Mayor Patali's also asked me to take a look at a second application for Safe Routes to School, and I will take a look at that. No reason why we can't file 2 applications. So that's a brief summary of my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did you say Third Avenue is going to be?
Third Avenue, the plans are completed for Third Avenue. They are about to go out to bid. I'm just going to ask Deputy Mayor Patali, I've asked him today, if he could walk it with me one more time. There are so many little details. There's a number of neighbors that have asked that we walked it a couple of months ago. We have a number of neighbors that want driveways moved a couple of feet. We have some old trees that need to be removed, or sidewalk to route around onto private property to gain some easements. There's a lot of details related to that $800,000 project. So plans are complete. I've asked Deputy Mayor Patel if he would walk it with me one more time, and we'll get it out to bid. I've shared the plans with NJDOT. I'll need their acceptance of my plans, but it's ready to go out to bid after we take one more look at it.
Questions for me? All right. Township committee members. Judy?
Just today, I heard a very discouraging news. My friend and one of our former committee persons, Bill Byers, fell and broke his neck. And he's going in for operation tomorrow. So please say some prayers for him. It's a very mind-blowing news. And I'm glad we're almost getting 3rd Street done, because that's the way I go to Wawa. Only kidding. Now on Pensacola Road, there is like the cover for the MUA. It's a hazard. You go over it and go, well, it needs to be leveled or something like that. It's indented, and it creates a problem for vehicles to go over it. Is it Ken Skull Road? Yeah.
I will take a look at it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, take it. Yeah, every time I go past it, I say, I'm gonna talk to Steve about that.
Yeah, I will look at it in the morning.
Okay, and that's about it.
Deputy Mayor?
We got Night of Lights coming up, August 21st, Saturday night. I believe they're saying that the boats will be going by the bulkhead around 9. So keep that in mind. It's always a good time. We just heard about Art in the Park. It's sponsored by the Hamilton Historical Society. That is September 18th down in War Memorial Park. Keep that in mind. I know we got the new beach cleaner, and I hear that that's doing a very good job. Everybody's happy with that. So always a good, kudos to Public Works. The cove always looks good. And the sign got installed for the Harry Hornicle Hockey Complex. And I'm very happy to say that that was paid for by all donations. The township didn't pay for anything except for the cost of Public Works to put it up. And the sign looks great. And everybody was very happy about that. So thanks to everybody for approving that and getting that through. It took a long time. COVID really slowed that down, but it's up and it looks good and everybody's happy. Mr. Hornicle was very surprised and very humbled. So thanks again. And that's it for me. Reagan, Maddie, miss you, love you. Hope to see you soon.
Good evening, Chief.
Very short, as everyone's aware that COVID is making its second wave. Just urge everyone to be cautious and let's try to nip it in the bud so we don't have to get back to where we were last year. That's it.
Rodney?
Current status of COVID, includes
Rodney, Atlantic County is a hotspot right now for COVID. I have a call into the county health department to get some numbers for Hamilton Township to see if we experienced a spike or not. My supposition is most of those cases are probably from the beach communities, from people from out of town coming down for their week or their rentals. I'm trying to confirm that.
No problem.
I'd just like to add, I did drive by Brett, the pole barn. We're still waiting on the doors. They should be installed soon, we hope. The building looks fantastic. Steve, great news on New York Avenue Bridge. I mean, to think that could be possibly finished this fall would be fantastic. The county did go out and permanently replace. I'm sure the chief is probably getting less phone calls. I know I'm getting less phone calls and emails. Permanently replaced the barriers that would constantly get knocked over, and as soon as they got knocked over, obviously everybody started using the roadway, and then the calls came in. So they went out, they did a good job, they replaced them, and I think that it's properly signed now, and it's eliminated phone calls. August 10th, I'm sure you'll get a nixle. If you haven't signed up for nixle, now would be a good time to do it, but I'm sure you'll get a nixle. Custard with a Cop will be held from 1:30 to 3 p.m. on August 10th. So, and Chief, did we swear in our new officers today?
Sworn in one of them.
Okay.
The other three were sworn in last week. So, the last one was sworn in today, Kyle McKnight, who's a hometown boy. He grew up here, went to Oakcrest, was a sheriff's officer, has a degree from Stockton. So he's going right into the FTO program tomorrow.
So that's 4 new officers
4 new officers.
and no
And-
increase in headcount, but it'll give us-
No increase in headcount. We will have 2 more retirements by the end of the year, so we'll be down again 2 more. But we start the process again for that.
Okay. That's all I have. And sorry. Oh, yes, thank you. And this week, the 4-H fair is returning. It will be a two-day event this year, Friday night, Friday night, and Saturday. Friday night is the car show, which I do have the pleasure of judging once again, the classic car show. They have quite a few reservations for that show. Judging is at 6 o'clock, but obviously, you know, the food there is fantastic. It is the only county fair that comes through our town, and it's for a great cause. So that it will be this Friday and Saturday. 4-H Fair is back in action, so if you have the opportunity to go out and support them, please do. Thank you.
Mayor, I do have one thing to report on. Since our last meeting, estimated tax bills were sent out to residents. We used the 1.05% to estimate them, which is on the high side. So not knowing what the county rate was going to be, we had to do estimated bills because the state didn't get their information done. The County Board of Taxation was unable to certify their rates as of today's date. We still have not gotten the certified tax rate yet from the county. Most residents, if not all, should see a lesser quarterly bill for November 1 than they saw for August 1 because we'll have the fixed rate by then and it'll go down. We didn't want to do it the other way by having a lower number and then make the adjustment for the last 3 quarters. So if anybody asks Township Committee why their tax bills seem to be a little higher compared to the prior quarter, is because we had to do an estimated and it wasn't the tax collector's fault or the Township Committee's fault that we did an estimated bill. We did not receive the certified tax rate from the County Board of Taxation yet.
And we are required by law to send those estimated tax bills out by a certain time.
We have this, okay. If we were a wealthy community, you could wait until you got a certified tax rate and not send out a tax bill at all. But because of cash flow and payroll and other expenses we have to send out. We have to give residents 25 days notice from their bill. So they have a little bit past August 1st to pay without penalty. So if we waited until they certified their rate, the bill wouldn't even been sent out yet. So the money wouldn't be due till late August, first week of September, which means that our cash flow, we've been really jammed up to the month of August if we didn't send out a bill.
Peter, thank you for that. All right, at this point, I'd like to open up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak?
Move to close.
I have a motion. Motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. All right. At this point, we will be adjoining into executive session, land use administrator compensation regarding personnel. Peter, will we be reconvening in public?
We will not be taking any action when you reconvene.
Entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Hamilton that this meeting be adjourned to an executive session to discuss the following matters which are exempt from public discussion pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law.
Tomorrow's bad for me.
Administrator
Thursday,
compensation
There's
personnel.
the spreadsheet.
Further resolved that the governing body will not reconvene in public session to confirm the results of the executive
There
session.
may be
Be it
a
further resolved that the
typo
results of the
in the
executive
end
session
there. I think we
shall be
can
made
spell the
known
word township.
as soon as the basis for
Would you have those two
confidentiality
things?
is no longer
Okay.
confidential.
You got it.
Yeah, that's